Hi, everybody. How is everybody? Great. I'm thrilled you're all here, and Laura Day is here to speak with us about repurposing classes and opportunities for community engagement work and social impact classes. She's at Hockaday School in Texas, and we work really closely with Laura throughout the year. She co-hosts our Degrees of Impact symposiums with us, and as a little plug, we'll be in Baltimore in March, and we will be in Chicago in June. So if this work interests you, join us for a deep dive in how to really get this going at your school. We're anticipating a larger group than usual, so I'm going to ask everybody I know is coming and going and they're in their schools, but if you could be on mute unless you have a question, that saves us. We are recording this. We put this on our online learning library, so it helps just with background noise and, you know, not that we don't love all the noise, but it makes it a little easier. And right now it's a smaller group, but if it gets too big to ask questions by just speaking out, which you should try first, feel free to use the chat button at the bottom and you can put up a question there, and then Laura can be sure to see it and to answer it if it's hard to get your question in the hour. Okay, so Laura, welcome.
Okay, hello. Hi, everybody. So here's my plan. I'm going to talk first about the issue that I think we probably all experience and what's kind of continually inspired me to work all of this work as much as possible into the students' day, as opposed to doing nights and weekends, which I think historically the work has been. And so I like to start with these slides, though depressing. It's, I think, what we're all facing with our students. And so I feel like what we need to work with kids on is trying to help them find purpose. And the way that we're trying to do that here at Hockaday is in every piece of the school's environment, everything kids do, we're working impact into that. And so that way, if you're into the violin, or you build robots, or you love multivariable calculus, you can see how that is applicable to the real world and creating impact. So I thought what I'd do is start with the littler people on our campus and talk a little bit about what we do in those classes, because I thought that might be helpful. And I'm happy to answer questions or kind of like double down on a grade level if people are interested. Are there, and since most people are muted, you can raise your hand. Are people pre-K to 12? Are there some pre-K to, there are some younger groups? Okay, so I'll hit on these. I decided it was helpful about 4 or 5 years ago to sit with our head of lower school and look for really loud themes that exist in grade levels. And so that way I can ensure, like you would with a math curriculum, that students are going to get a touch point about most social issues before they're coming into high school, where I'll talk about what we do there, but it's really the Wild West and there's a lot of options. So in doing this and connecting it into the curriculum the students are learning, they're able to really apply their learning, and from a very young age, getting in front of them and using the same language has been really helpful to shift a culture. When I got here 8 years ago, we were really traditional community service. No organization, going to all these different schools, didn't really know what end was up. People didn't know what the next class was doing. Now we have a really streamlined process as a way to kind of repurpose. So you can see here what our themes are. Why don't I focus on first grade, just as an example, if that's okay for people, unless there's another one you want. Is first grade okay? Okay. So for first grade, animals is a big theme. They learn about them throughout. And so we talk about, we have in each grade level, pre-K to 8th grade, we have 4 touch points, and they're very clear. 1 is we bring an outside speaker to talk about the issue. 2 is we have a project on campus that gets at that issue. 3, we take them off campus to do something connected to that. And then 4, we do some sort of reflection piece. What I'm learning is the more years we do this, the more this grows. Just recently, the first grade is now working with the zoo on endangered penguins and helping build habitats that would help the penguin population, and they're working with the zoo. And that came out of just we were already doing these other projects, so we were able to add that into the curriculum because they learn about penguins. One of the cool things in first grade that we do is they go and read at a local animal shelter, and then our statistics class is tracking to see if we are having an effect on adoption rates at that shelter. And so they partner together with our statistics class, and then we're able to go back to the first grade and say, oh my goodness, great job. 20% of more animals are adopted this year because of the work you've been doing. And so early on, trying to reward inside of the classroom a connected theme, but also tracking a little bit so kids can see that what they're doing isn't just kind of going into a giant ocean, but it's actually connected. Since there are a couple pre-K people, or pre-K to 8 people that have that at their schools, I will say another thing that we've done is we've repurposed parties. They have a lot of parties around the holidays, and so now every party, instead of doing a craft that traditionally gets thrown away, is a craft that's connected to the theme and then given to whatever organization supports that. So we're looking for every single possible way inside of that day that we can repurpose, and not in an extreme sense, but in ways that lend itself, we're looking to do that. Any questions about any of the grade levels or anything that's up here before I move on?
No, thank you.
So the other thing that we do is we look at athletics, arts, and really beyond. So the issue, and this is now moving more into middle and upper school, students, as you know, at your campuses are on campus until what, like 6, 7 o'clock every day. And so to me, I couldn't keep having them go to the shelter then after that. And so what we've done really clearly and has been unbelievably helpful is we've repurposed one practice per JV and varsity sports team each season. And they go to our local elementary school partners. So we're already going to the local elementary school and reading to students and building a relationship. And then we send our varsity or JV team to a different school. So we work right now with about 12 schools. So we scatter them out. And when they go to the school, they do a clinic for their sport. We give them equipment to back that up because we always have extra equipment. We have students who help get equipment from people at their homes that have extra. And then we try to do some sort of restorative project. So we just did our soccer program and we redid the field at an elementary school. So they have lines, nets, and flags. And then we did a clinic. So really cool way to get buy-in. A way that we got at this is we wrote it into the coach's contract. That this was part of what they had to do. And I got buy-in from the athletic director. And I'm year 8, so I didn't get buy-in from the athletic director at year 4. And I'm not saying you couldn't, I'm just saying that we've grown into this and this has started to become something kids demand and enjoy. And also you could sell it to an athletic director as it's an unbelievable team thing. I played college basketball, we used to do this and it was such a bonding moment. And this is something that's an easy repurpose and an easy use of time. So that's just an option there. All of our art, music groups do something connected to this. They all do different things based on what the need of our local community is. Our biggest need I've learned from principals of local public schools is the opportunity gap. If their students aren't seeing performances, they're not seeing theater, they don't understand what that means, and then that's hitting them in their standardized tests. So what we're trying to do is blow open that opportunity gap by get buses for kids to come to our performances, go in sometimes to the classes and do the different arts with them. We have improv groups. Everybody is either going out or coming in, but it's kind of a known thing that inside of it, you need to do something that's connected. And it didn't start day one that we were all doing this. It slowly started in different areas and people started to kind of jump on. I'll pause again, just because I don't want to keep talking at you in case there's questions about this kind of work.
Thank you.
Oh, and we have a special guest at 11:30 where I have a couple students coming in to talk. I thought that would be fun for you guys to hear from them about this work. I just grabbed them in the hallway before I came in here, so they'll be happy to tell you anything you want to know. So some of you maybe got this if you were at this recent conference. We have the tangible version. It's also on our website, and it's here. We started with 1 class and now we're at 12, we'll be at 13 next year, where we're looking inside an existing curriculum and we're repurposing inside of that as a way to make it what we're calling a social impact course. What it has to do, and I'm just going to read this so everybody's on the same page, and normally I'm not going to read from something, but it's good language. This is what we deem to be a social impact course, and that decision is made by myself, the Dean of Studies, and our Head of College Counseling. So we look at these classes and decide, and I spend a lot of time reworking the curriculum with the teacher as a way to make it reflect this. And so what we're trying to do is these courses are emphasizing real world experiences and outcomes such as strong advocacy skills, increased community interactions, and hands-on practice in designing solutions while exploring purpose and building empathy. Throughout each course, students complete alternative assessments that evaluate soft skills such as empathy, creativity, collaboration, and purpose, as well as we measure the overall social impact experienced by our community partners. If the class doesn't have all of those things, it's not a social impact class. And so that is what we've done inside of all of the classes that you see here. And I don't know, I imagine it's helpful for me to go through a couple classes for you all so you can see how this lives, but I kind of want you to choose which ones, because I don't want to talk about a class that's not as interesting or whatever. So if somebody wants to pick a class, that might be a fun way to do this. And then it's interactive. So you guys could pick a class and I'm happy to tell you kind of how it came to be and what inside of it makes it a social impact class.
How about Spanish in the barrio?
Spanish in the barrio. So that is a Spanish elective. It was originally just kind of that senior level Spanish where they're mildly getting fluent and enjoying speaking. And instead, we focused on 3 issue areas: literacy, healthcare, and the elderly. And so we had 3 units inside of that where each one had a tangible outcome. And the outcome was something the community needed. And that is how we assessed. So we had rubrics for each unit. The first one, we worked with a dual language school and we wrote a children's book, one of our kids with one of their kids. And they wrote a children's book together that was then given to the kid at the end. The healthcare, we were translators at our local clinic, as well as helped work with people waiting in the waiting room, asking them in Spanish what would make their experience better. And the third one, we worked at a community center that is filled with people who all speak Spanish from all different countries. And our students went in and participated in the activities they were doing. They were playing bingo, they were doing all these different things, and they sat and they had conversations and tried to talk to them very kind of passively, I would say, and build empathy with them to understand what issues they wanted to fix at their community center. And so each year there's some project that gets created. And so this year they wanted to have a karaoke machine. They all love to sing. And so our students got a karaoke machine, and the final project was they sang songs in Spanish together. So it's just it's a cool way for them to practice Spanish throughout, but also meet needs of our community partners.
How often do they go to these organizations in a semester?
We went
or
about
through a unit?
4 to 6 times.
Okay, each one. Okay.
And that was, we made it a small enough group that they fit on a bus. We have 12 passenger buses, so that's how we decided that class.
Laura, there's 2 questions. One is, can you talk specifically about the math class? And then the second question was, what is your role in helping design these courses?
Great questions. I was just in the math class, actually. We have our board of trustees visiting today, and so I brought all of our trustees into that classroom because I'm so excited about it. It's a 9th grade enriched class, so it's our highest level math class for 9th graders. So what they're doing is not only learning math, but they're using an app called Goose Chase. Have any of you heard of it? It's a scavenger hunt that you can take photos and questions in the world and put it on an app called Goose Chase. And so our students learned in this class that if our area public school 8th graders aren't proficient in algebra in 8th grade, their college readiness is not possible. So a big focus in our middle school public schools is that algebra becomes a thing they care about. So we spend a lot of time explaining that and helping our students understand that. Our students then read the TEKS, is what we call them, for 8th grade algebra to understand what they were trying to teach. And then our students went on the campus of Marsh and found math in the world. And so they'd find perpendicular lines and put it as a question on this goose chase. And then we're going back in a week and we're gonna do the scavenger hunt with the students, but then those students are gonna do it with the other students. And every year we're gonna create these math in the real world, and then we're gonna do it at our local middle schools as a way to unlock this idea that math isn't just on a piece of paper, but it is actually everywhere. And data shows that if you make math relational, students are more successful. And so that is a first-year class. It's very cool. It's working. Our students are like, talk about enrichment, right? Like, enrichment doesn't have to be more problems or more in depth. It's how do you apply what you're learning to the world? And so we're seeing that. And right now, actually, they're learning, I wish she was standing next to me, something about exponential something, and they're tracking to predict the coronavirus, and they're gonna submit that to the CDC. I mean, like, I don't know if they'll care, but at least it's a real world application. And so the hope is, how do you find math in the world? And this class is zeroing in on how to do that.
So is that done every day, or is it?
It's sporadic because learning has to happen, right? So I'd say they're doing this kind of thing every week or two. We started with them doing it on our own campus with 3rd grade and helping 3rd grade see math on their playground. So they had a test run at it and they were able to go down and work with our younger students. So there's a lot of different applications. The other question, how involved am I in these classes? Is that the question, Blake?
In designing them.
In designing them, yeah. Almost every one of them I'm involved in. I teach 2 of them, not by myself as a co-teacher. I teach Breaking the Glass Ceiling. I wrote that class where we're incubating businesses, and it's taught by alums all over the world. And I also co-teach our Anatomy, Evolution in the Zoo class. And that's a pretty cool class. And those 2 I helped design with the teacher because we were writing them for ourselves. The rest of the classes, most of them kind of existed, as you can see, like a government class or an orchestra. Like, I didn't write those classes, but I spent summers in different free time, chunks of time, sitting with the teachers and combing through the curriculum and finding where there were inroads, and worked with the teachers so they felt empowered too to integrate this work. And so the rest of the classes that I'm not co-teaching, that's how involved I am. I go into the class, I pop in on every one of these classes and give different pieces. Like, we have a couple students who took the race class in gender, they're coming in. I ran a homeless simulation in downtown Dallas that I've been doing for a really long time as a way for them to build empathy before a unit about homelessness. And so I will pop in and teach supplemental pieces. I will also sit with teachers and create inside of curriculum, and I'm really drilling down on these alternative assessments. I'm working with all of these teachers. We have a group, we all get together. We're sharing how you do that and how each group is doing that, and we're kind of building these tools so we can reward empathy and creativity in all of the different ways you see it in math and in AP Human Geo and those kinds of things. Is that helpful?
Quick question, how do you assess empathy and creativity? Do you have a pretty elaborate rubric for that?
We do, depends on the class, as you might imagine. One of our best, most polished class, I would call it our signature class whenever I talk to people, it's our Anatomy, Evolution in the Zoo. It was the first class out of the gates that had this kind of social impact thing going on. That whole class is rubric based, and it's all driving to a final assessment. We got rid of the exam, and their final assessment is a Shark Tank. We teach that class in partnership with a public high school. And so they get in mixed public private high school groups, and then at the end, the rubric is showing their progress in all the things we care about. So empathy, creativity, collaboration. They're self-assessing, and then we're assessing them back. And we're doing that all the way through, but the public school's doing that as well. Then we're bringing all that together with a rubric that pulls that together for that final Shark Tank pitch, where we're evaluating how much empathy did you build and all of those things. And then their final assessment is on that Shark Tank. It's not if they win. There is a group that can win and gets money to run with their idea. But if you don't win, you could still get whatever, an A, I mean, because we still do grades. But you can have had an unbelievable amount of creativity and empathy and that kind of thing. And so that it has a rubric that evolves itself throughout the whole class with some minor assessments around content for biology.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other class that anybody wants me to talk about or any other questions?
I have two quick questions. One is, what does your schedule look like? And the other question has to do with, what's the inducement besides student interest to take these courses? Is if they take enough of them, is there a certificate, or what's the path for students through this curriculum?
Great. I'll answer that one first. That is no. So there's no path. There is student interest growing more and more for them because of word of mouth. Also because these students I bring them intentionally and teachers intentionally in front of many groups of people, parents, faculty. I'm having them talk about the experience, so that's how the popularity grows. The college counseling group and I are teamed up. We've been presenting different places around the country, as well as every dean that comes through, admission dean that comes through, they sit down, show them this list and talk to them about them. They're very partnered with me. I think that is half, if not 75% of the success of these, is that now colleges understand what we're talking about and understand the depth at which our students are doing this work. And so that's been really helpful. And then what was your first question? I'm sorry.
It was just about what your schedule looks like.
Yeah, so it's kind of a traditional block schedule that's a 6-day rotation. So our classes are an hour and 20 minutes and they alternate each day. Every other day we have a free block from 2:40 to 4. And then we have a chunk in the middle of the day, conference and lunch, which I can talk about actually, that is about an hour. And we send 400 students, which is about 85% of our upper school, off campus every week to a recurring tutoring program. So they're working on 3rd grade reading level, so pre-K to 3rd grade, and we're tracking data on that. And they're going to the same kid in the same 12 schools each day. And so that gap we use, and we go to the schools that are right by us. And then our students track the data to see if we're moving the needle on 3rd grade reading level, because obviously that's a huge indicator. And that's something we also repurpose inside of the day. So if you're a student here, you're really able to do almost all of this work by the time you go home. I offer some Saturdays and some nights, becoming way less popular because this is where kind of that rich piece is, because it's connected to curriculum. And that school day thing's huge because now it's a talking point. Kids will tell you in the hallway about, we're up 13% on reading level, and they're proud of it. And we talk about it at an assembly and that kind of thing.
How do you get your hands on that data?
What now?
How do you get your hands on the data from a public school? Isn't that pretty complex?
It's public. Test scores are public, and we have formed, and this is for another day because it's a long story. We formed I helped create an outside nonprofit that's now running, that is organizing private and public schools in our area, and they are helping us get that data and making sense of it. But the public school data in terms of testing scores is public. So we can see that if in 2018, Gooch Elementary was reading, 3rd graders were reading at a 40%, and then they were reading at a 65%. And we can see that that the needle has moved. And
so it's the school in general. It's not the specific targeted kids that you're tutoring.
We do track that as well through a program called Book Nook, and they track that. And so we're able to use that data as well. Reading Partners was the organization, and the guy who founded it split off, and it's like a tablet thing. So kids are working on this, so you're able to actually track data on the actual kids. You're also able to, we actually are, and then can track on schools. So we can kind of do both.
Okay.
You can see if your personal kid has grown, and then you can see did the grade level grow. So we kind of have both pieces.
Okay.
Which has been really helpful.
Laura, there's a question from Jessica. How do you balance your time on campus, student facing versus stewarding partnerships in the community?
Good question. I spent a ton of time when I was hired for 2 years. I'd say 60% of my time off campus. I had at that time, which I do not anymore, I do this by myself, I had an assistant, and that person held the fort down while I went all over the city of Dallas. I serve on what we call, they're soft boards, not really boards, of public schools in the area. So that way I'm on their campuses. And then I try to go on a lot of these projects because then I'm double dipping because I'm on campus, but also running a program. but I would say that I spend 70% of my time on campus involved in pre-K to 12. And then I spend about 30% continuing relationships, making new ones, doubling back at the public high school to talk to the teacher to make sure we're in, you know, in a good place and that kind of thing. But that grew. So like I would, if you were looking at it as like almost like a mathematical graph, early on, I was spending a ton of time building partnerships because as a school in our community, we're seen as kind of a privileged white big wall place. And so I needed to get past that for a couple of years to get partnerships and trust. And now I've been able to, as time's gone on, pull out because our kids are on these campuses so much and they're representing who we are now, which is helpful and keeps us connected to our community. Almost time for the students. I would love to pause and maybe they're coming any minute. Okay. So these are the requirements just so that way they're clear and up there in a social impact class. They have to hit all 5. My hope, just so everybody knows where the future is, my hope is that this also runs pre-K 8. We are looking to add every one of these experiences in every grade. Some we're missing, some of these, and some we have all of them. And so this is just a barometer for me to know if we're doing it correctly. And making sure our kids have touch points all across.
And Laura, I've professed this to 2 people already, but can we share your slides when you're done? Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, okay. So we are orchestra, and I'm just very quickly going to run through some of the things that happen during the school day. And then I also should talk to you about what we track, what we require of our students, because I think that's interesting. First, orchestra, 1 class here, 1 class at a local elementary school that's math, that's music was pulled out. And so our teacher and their teacher work closely together. Science, we have a public health class. We're trying to get vaccines, flu vaccines. We got 2 schools completely flu vaccinated this year, which was a miracle because no students were getting it. And so our students worked on that. And then that's our zoo class. Our partnership is with a public high school, but also the Dallas Zoo. That class we're actually writing up in kind of almost a book that we're going to be able to have use in different cities that have zoos. And my hope is that this class could be replicated in all over the country in cities that have zoos because they're so helpful. The zoo. Really focused on conservation now. History, government was a government class. Now you find kids in the hall saying it's their favorite class. Instead of writing a research paper, they write a bill or have to take a political action of some sort. And we bring in 4 politicians in a semester, all female. And all they say is we ask them to tell their story as a woman in politics. It's a way to get away from it being political. This is Kristen Sinema from Arizona. She's a senator. And visited and told her story of why she got into politics.
Laura, as you're like continuing to kind of build these programs year after year, are you experiencing any partnership or speaker fatigue? Like one of the things we're experiencing is like we get people that are happy to come like once or twice. And then as we're running things for the 3rd year or 4th year, they're kind of like, oh man, like I was happy to volunteer that 1 week, but it's really hard for me to dedicate a week every year to doing this project.
Yes, good question. Hold on. 1 minute, students. And let me answer this question. Yes and no. So here's the thing. If we have people, so like the politicians, we get new ones. If we have people who come on a repetitive basis, I'm always trying to make it worth their while in that if they come, they don't leave empty-handed. So like we have a reading group who talks to our 4th grade every year, and they know when they come, they're going to leave with 20 boxes of books. So it's like this kind of like, if you come, thank you so much. And we're going to make sure things happen. I also have a Instagram and a Twitter that I post every day on, and our school has one too. And having our families see about their organizations is another thing. I always try to tag them all the time. So they're getting marketing and getting families who might give money to them. So I'm trying to make it worth their while and our while so there's not like a fatigue. I'm going to let the students in for 2 seconds. Come on in and shut the door. I guess I should get off. No, we're just gonna, here, come bring your little faces in. Perfect. So these are two seniors that I found earlier in the hallway. They've taken some social impact classes. They can tell you what classes they took. And then just quickly, I thought, you don't have to trust me, but I thought you should hear them and hear why they enjoyed them and why they were different from other classes. So let's start with you. What classes you've taken and what it meant.
I took the anatomy, evolution, and zoo class last year, and it was really fun for me because we got to do all of the normal biology stuff, like dissect, learn about evolution, but we also got to kind of go out. My favorite part was going to the zoo. We got to kind of go back behind the scenes and learn about animals from a different perspective, and it was really awesome because I felt like I was getting more firsthand experience, and it was more applicable to real life than a traditional class would be, so that was really awesome.
Yeah, I also took the zoo class last year, which was lots of fun. And then this year I took an English class called Culinary Experiences in Literature. And so in that class, we had a group of women who were refugees from a couple different countries. And so they basically work for this business. It's like a catering company where they cook food, and that's kind of how they can make money and build their own careers. A lot of them start companies after that. So they came and cooked for us, which was really cool because obviously a big part of English is hearing stories that are different from yours. And then I was also taking a history class called Race, Class, and Gender in American History. And we went to a local museum. It was just kind of in a community center, and learned more about like the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King. And it was interesting hearing how like that community had set up the museum. And we also did a homeless simulation where we went into downtown and learned more about the experience of homeless people in Dallas.
And then say about zoo, say the design thinking piece and how the alternative assessment and working with public schools.
Oh yeah, so the whole year as we were kind of learning about like anatomy and stuff, just the typical science courses, we were also partnered with W.T. White, which is a public school down the street from our school, Hockaday. And we were working to kind of apply the things that we had been learning in the classroom to creating a product that could combat like a world problem. And so like my group, we were trying to combat habitat destruction. And so we created like a product for that. And then we were—
Tell them your product, it was cool.
So we created this thing called Green Tops, and it was kind of like box tops. Except that instead we had like a website and kids could learn more about it. So they were more involved, and then the proceeds would go to like organizations that helped animals. And so throughout the entire year, we were kind of working with that public school and then with our teams at Hockaday and working to build that product. And then at the end of the year, we did like a business pitch to kind of mimic like a Shark Tank episode. So that was really awesome because we got like experience kind of with public speaking and like learning how to do a business pitch. So that was really cool. And
yeah, my group, we created or designed an app with the goal of teaching younger kids how to recycle, because we saw that was like a big problem in our community is like people want to recycle, they just don't really know how. And so our group was the group that won like our Shark Tank pitch. And so through that, Hockaday financially is supporting us as we're like working through the process of actually making the app. And then also the Dallas Zoo is in talks with us about helping actually develop the app. But through the class, something kind of unique we did is we didn't have traditional tests and quizzes. Obviously it was like a biology class. We were still learning basic biology. So we had homework and assignments in class and we did problem sets. But instead of tests, we did these kind of like alternate assessments where we looked at, what are they called? The tenets of—
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which Hockaday science tenets.
Yeah, which all tie into the words I was using with empathy and creativity and,
Yeah.
and developing that.
Yeah.
And they self-assess themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of wrote a little paper just reflecting on that unit, things we had learned, things we want to work on, but also kind of our skills and how we learned them. Which was really unique because I had never done that in a class before, and it made all of us really sit down and think, like, not just, okay, do I know this to be tested on it, but how can I further my understanding in a way that's not just to take a test and get a good grade?
Yeah, I think that for me also it was a really good opportunity because, I mean, like, obviously, like, in a traditional class, like, you're kind of only graded on, like, your tests and how you prepare and like execute a very specific like test or something, but in this it gave us the opportunity to kind of be the best in what we thought we were best at, and so it gave everyone the opportunity to kind of shine in what they were good at. So that was awesome.
This is what we want from everybody. This is good. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Y'all are the best. I appreciate you guys coming in here.
Thank you.
Thanks guys. Y'all are awesome. So yes, and that's like the answer you'll get from any kid who takes these classes, which is why I'm on fire about this kind of stuff and want people to be doing more of it, because you know, those students, like one of their quotes, one of the kids is actually a learning different student. First class she's had great success in, because we weren't just making her memorize and regurgitate. She felt like she was a real contributor, and she really loved it. Her mom, every day she sees me, like pulls me aside and like hugs me, because she felt like she found something she cared about. And their ideas are so great. And that was cool, because we had diversity of opinion in the room too. Their partners were all from different backgrounds than them, so they were able to create real products. Any questions, anyone? Just like to stop, don't like to go through. All right, here we go. Told you about math. English, she talked about this. Most all of our English classes try to learn from real stories and write stories that actually help people. I will say that this class is final assessment, which is interesting. It's a toast to taste. It's an English class. They're gonna help pitch a women-only restaurant week in Dallas, and they're writing the press releases. So that's a way you can help a nonprofit by writing a press release, but also understanding why the issue matters. So we brought women in to talk to them about that. And now their final assessment, and this is new, hot off the press, they're going to be writing these things, and then whichever one works the best they're going to use as a way to get media around the Women's Restaurant Week. So how do you do it? Really continuous conversation about using those words every single place. Kids now use the word empathy all the time in the hallway, which is really great. And it's because we're trying to get teachers and coaches and everyone to use the same language and talk about this in the same way. I really am a big fan of repurposing inside of a school day. I personally can't add any more to these kids' calendars. They're really too busy. And then one of our requirements, so we require hours because we do. Someday maybe we won't, but right now we do. And we use Mobile Serve, which is an app that allows you not only to track hours, but also track different things. So we track photos. So kids have to upload 3 photos, and I brought a couple of them. I thought they would be fun, of joy. So they have to actually name joy and upload them. So it's a way for them to like really have to find a moment in which they're doing this work, but then also train their brain to find joy and happiness in it. And this is one of our public-private classes. And so let's find one other good one. Oh, this is from that Spanish in the Barrio class. This is one of the friends they made. So I have 5,000 photos already uploaded from our students of them finding joy, which is well above the number I required. But it's one, not only helpful on my end, because I can use a lot of these photos to show in front of faculty and keep getting people to support this work, but also the students are really into it because they're already taking photos of everything. And so my thought is let's get a hold of that and turn those powers to good and make them think about joy. The other thing I would say is the culture of really celebrating successes. For 8 years, I do that every single place possible. Today, as an example, our board of trustees are wandering around the hall and I'm hunting them down and pulling them into classes that I know they need to hear about. And so I just pulled 4 of them in before I got in here to that math class and told the math students to tell them what they're doing. And they were blown away. But if you're not celebrating your successes and not getting everyone's attention on this work to help build this movement, it's harder to change a culture. And again, I really did come into a school that was not doing this, and in 8 years now we're really putting it in most places that we can. Any questions or comments or thoughts on that kind of thing?
A couple of things. First, it's really mind-blowing what you've done at the school, so I really commend you on your progress. My questions are, what kind of evidence do you have on kind of incoming in terms of admissions, the impact on admissions, and also you alluded to it a little bit in terms of your college piece as well, because that's something I think always gets people's attention.
Yeah, it is. So admissions, it's loose. The problem is we haven't done a good job of tracking that. Qualitatively, unfortunately, I have that information. So I have the people who are in the admission interviews stopping me in the hall to say, these parents only came here because they heard about the Institute for Social Impact, or we're getting, we're getting kids who maybe would have gone to magnets or public schools, which I'm not trying to steal from them because I'm a big public school supporter, who are looking at our school because we're giving something different. And so that anecdotally I'm hearing, I'd love to track it, but unfortunately as one person right now, I got to pick and choose, but that's a next frontier for me. In colleges, I have, again, anecdotally, so I recently met with the Dean of Admissions for USC, North Carolina, Bates, and Johns Hopkins. And they were unbelievably, all they say is this is exactly what we want. We want more of this. This is the kind of thing we're looking for. Anybody I get in front of, and my college counselors, I cannot explain what a good partnership that is. Anytime they present, this is 50% of what they talk about in front of parents, in front of everyone, because they're trying to reward this. As y'all know, I mean, the college process, they want authentic kids, and a way to get an authentic kid is to build this in. And so there's not a, did they do it, or did they go ride an elephant somewhere, or, like what's the meat of this? And we are building these profiles of these classes also that we're sending out to colleges, so you can see that because the one question, right, is where do you lose academic rigor? And that's a big question. I would argue to say we've taken it up 10 notches in the sense that we're making you have all these connections. Like she was saying, like I had to take biology, but then apply what was happening in the world to the biology I learned, and then pitch an idea while learning empathy and creativity. Like that's, to me, that's really impressive. And yes, I could talk till I'm blue in the face to a college admission dean, but we've been building these tools that show what these classes are. And I have one finished for the zoo class, and that I think helps tell the story. And we're able to give that to college admission deans as a continuation of, talking about our students. This is new, so this is a couple years in, so I don't know, like data wise, my hope is kids go to more of a fit university for them. And that's what we hope to track going forward. And then we also hope to track 5 years out to see if students are feeling like they are living lives of purpose and impact, because that's part of our mission. And absolutely what we want to make sure they feel. And so that is something I also want to track. But as we all know, time is of the essence and very hard. So any other questions on this? We're almost, okay. Well, we can stop here, and I can answer any questions. I can go into detail about anything you want me to. I just don't want to completely talk at you for an entire hour. So anything else that people would want me to dive deeper on, this is how you get a hold of me. I also am starting to do consulting with schools who want to look at how to do this in the school day or repurpose classes and that kind of. So any questions?
Could you say a little bit about where your school is located and how long or it takes you to get them from your campus to the different service partners?
Question. We're in North Dallas. We're in an area of Dallas that is interestingly very affluent, but the public schools, which I guess is probably how it is in the country, are 98% free and reduced lunch and students of color. So we're weirdly in, I think, probably a good situation for this work in the sense that we probably have about 8 elementary schools within a 10-minute drive. We focus mostly on elementary during the school day because we really care about 3rd grade reading level, because that's the indicator for kids to graduate from high school. So we're really motivated by that, and so are our students. The other partners, any partner we work with during the school day is within about a 15-minute radius of us. All of our homeless shelters and things like that are further away. So I would say 20 minutes, like that homeless simulation, we pulled it off. but we bumped into advisory or we bumped into lunch. Do you know what I mean? So I had to become real good friends with our registrar to get some of these classes placed in the right sweet spot to have a little bit of wiggle room so I can pull off. Like we do a food desert simulation with a local community in South Dallas. They take us on it, take us into a grocery store and have kids do stuff there because we're working to build a grocery store in AP Environmental Science. And so that's hard, but we get, because that's far away. And so some things like that I'm worried about because they're too far, but I'd say 60% of what we do is about 10 to 15 minutes, which allows us to do this. The other way we do it, one, I drive the bus all the time to make this stuff happen. Two, parents are allowed to sign their children's life away and let them ride with older students. Because of the programming they do, we don't have anyone really who doesn't sign that form. So to send 400 kids off, seniors and juniors drive and freshmen and sophomores ride, which is kind of a cool way to get them to know each other. And then they go to the program. And so that's a way we get a massive amount of kids off campus is that tool. Like that's one of our magical tools is older kids driving younger kids. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Laura, I was wondering if you could talk maybe a little bit about your start in this position. And you mentioned that your time off campus and how that's evolved, changed. And maybe just if you could talk a little bit about what you were hired specifically to do and how much convincing you had to make for being off campus for 60% of the time your first couple of years.
Great question. I was hired with the intent. I was hired, interestingly enough, to do this job not only at Hockaday but also St. Mark's, which is a boys' school. So I was hired to do this job pre-K-12 at 2 schools, which I did for 2 years, which is crazy. And then I said, this isn't going to work. And then Hockaday said, we want to move the work, and they didn't use words they don't know, but we want it to be different than it is. We want it to be, probably then service learning was the term they used. And so I had their blessing to do that. And I also will say uniquely, maybe not uniquely, I don't know anyone else. I kind of operate almost alone, not in a creepy way, but I kind of just do whatever I think is best. And then since then, that's kind of worked out. I really think that relationship building was the key to everything my first 3 years. I spent a ton of time on public school campuses and became trusted by them. And I spent a ton of time finding early adopter adults on this campus who would believe in what I did. Early adopter, the head of lower school. She and I created something because she wanted to, and then I showcased that everywhere. It was piece by incremental piece relationships. And then I now go to the board meetings because I'm on our leadership team, and I'm very strategic as well about who I talk to or who I invite. Like when we have events like the Shark Tank pitch, I invite really strategic partners. So since that first year of building relationships, it's been about relationships. It's been about showing rewards and reading quotes from students. And I had a school who was interested in it, but I think I made the right partners, in one being the college counseling office, because in our schools, that's such the end result. That's like, it matters to people. And so having them as a partner that was saying what she's doing is making our job easy, that's all it takes, right? Is for them to say that. And then everyone's like, what do you need? What do you want to do? And then the other piece, to be honest with you, is I was able to show data early on to our board about the impact we were having in the community that they were probably philanthropically giving money to, and say, our students are up 13% over everybody else in the city with third grade reading level. And they could see the graph and they could see it and they understood it. So all those different pieces were able to kind of keep pushing in the direction. And our mission getting rewritten to say living lives of purpose and impact is helpful, because I use that every 4 minutes. And you can't not do this work the way we're doing it if you don't mean that. And so that's helpful. And we had a new head of school come in too from college. So she understood why this was important. So that was helpful. And a lot of board members now know the work I do and know that I work with their nonprofit they care about. And so there's just been a lot of relationship building that's helped move our needle.
Laura, you talked about how it's in the contracts of the coaches. What's it look like in the hiring process for teachers? Is it?
A lot of teachers, and this is another anecdotal point to a question earlier, a lot of teachers are taking jobs here because of our Institute for Social Impact. They'll tell me that in the hallway. They're weirdly now, not weirdly, but they're excitingly wanting to have social impact classes because that's something that's put in the folder of anyone we hire. It's also talked about. I'm not in on a lot of the interviewing, but all the department heads now have become pretty excited because they've seen these classes, and we have, as you see, one in every department head group, and they know about these classes. And so they know, especially with young faculty, that this is a recruiting tool, and they're using that now as time's gone on. It's not like written into anything, but it's the person who does the hiring puts this information in there on purpose. And we're seeing that it's getting those teachers who want to do that to come here.
Hey, Laura, I have a question for you.
Ross.
What are you doing in terms of helping students understand how this work relates to their own identity, or maybe process emotions or do personal reflections? How do you build that kind of self-work into these programs?
Yeah, it's a good question. One way we do it is we front load our school year with retreats. We take a whole week before we start school, and 50% of every retreat I help plan. And so in doing that, that's not obviously reflection, but it's reflection, right, as you get older in a grade. But those retreats are really strategic and have themes. So like the sophomores are empathy, and so we do a lot of work around them building. There's groups we bring in that help them build empathy with themselves, experiences, the work that they do. Juniors, we do leadership. So we're front loading. Every group's getting a week-long, couple-day-long retreat that's focused on one of those outcomes, and it's built into the beginning. And then in these classes, it's built into the reflection and assessment. So that's where I'd say that was the case. Like they were talking about how they had to write on a rubric where they thought their empathy lied with building relationships with their public school partners. And then we sat with them and talked through, what does that look like? Why is that hard? What are your struggles? And so every class, ideally, as we get them tightened up, will model that. So they'll have continuous reflection on those things we're trying to drive towards, and we're front loading in a retreat. And that's as good as we've gotten so far.
But you also do some very specific identity work with your lower school kids, right?
Yeah, we do in various places. They all do morning meetings, and so we repurpose tons of those for this work. I mean, I now have, to grow a program like this, I now have a division liaison volunteer. I buy them gifts at the end of the year. And then I have a grade level liaison. And so slowly the work is being owned by those people, and they're leading morning meeting, or they're, so I'm slowly getting a volunteer army to help with this, and those people are helping with the messaging as well as in like the morning meetings. Okay. Anything else before we all go back to our exciting lives in schools?
Thank you so much. This is great information. It's very impressive hearing about what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and listening for an hour. How amazing.
Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing
Laura.
what you're doing. Laura's going to send me these slides, I'm certain, today at some point, and I will send them out to all of us. And Laura's email is right in front of us, but if anybody needs to get in contact with her, you can always reach out to me. And Annie's saying thank you. It's great to see all you on a Wednesday at lunch, or some of you it's in the morning. Maria, it's bright eye in the morning for you. Anyway, Thank you all for being here, and we're going to have some last-minute additions to these webinars in March and April, and then the last scheduled one currently is in May, and it's with the Burke School about creating a social justice school. But keep looking back, as we have a couple new additions that we're adding to the schedule. And if anybody's interested in doing more work with me and Laura, will be at Bryn Mawr School in Baltimore, March 9th and 10th, or in Latin School of Chicago, June 22nd, 23rd, I believe, are the dates. So for the Degrees of Impact, which is a really hands-on design thinking-ish opportunity to think about planning your programs. So anyway, on that note, I hope everybody
follow me at Hockaday Impact. I post 4 times a day, and so if you want to see our programs in action, just as a way to know what's up, like feel free to follow.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, everybody. Reach out if you have any questions, and if not, we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.